Friends, if you're excited to watch the intense, mind-blowing, and absolutely gripping movie Final Destination 5 2011, in English, then make sure to like this video right now to show your support. And hey, if you're visiting our channel for the first time, a very warm welcome to you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on the latest updates, interesting movie facts, reviews, and breakdowns. Because in today's video, we're diving deep into one of the most suspenseful entries in the Final Destination franchise. Final Destination 5. We're going to talk about everything, from where you can watch it, to the incredible technical work that went into its making, the storyline, characters, performances, and so much more. So what exactly is Final Destination 5? It's a psychological horror thriller with a supernatural twist. One of those films that gets under your skin and makes you think twice about every little accident in your daily life. This movie, like the others in the franchise, follows a group of people who narrowly escape a deadly disaster thanks to one person's sudden and mysterious premonition. In this case, the disaster is a horrifying suspension bridge collapse, one of the most epic opening sequences in the series. But just like always, death doesn't like being cheated. So, one by one, the survivors start dying in the most shocking, creative, and gruesome ways imaginable. The suspense of who's next and how it will happen keeps you glued to the screen with sweaty palms. But we're not just here to talk about the story, we're here to give you the full picture. In this video, you'll get to know where exactly you can stream or watch Final Destination 5, whether it's available on your favorite OTT platforms like Netflix, Prime Video, or Hulu, or if it's airing on any satellite movie channels. Whether you're watching from home, on your phone, or planning a horror movie night with friends, I'll tell you how to watch it legally and in top quality. Now let's get into the making of this movie. We'll talk about the pre-production stage, how the story was planned, who wrote the screenplay, and how the fifth installment was designed to connect with the earlier films in surprising ways. Did you know this movie has one of the smartest twists in the series? We'll talk about how the filmmakers approached this project with fresh energy, giving longtime fans something new while staying true to the Final Destination vibe. We'll also cover the filming process, including where it was shot, how the special effects were created, especially that bridge scene, and what kind of stunts and camera tricks were used to make everything look so real and terrifying. And yes, we'll discuss the technical departments that made this movie so effective, like cinematography, editing, visual effects, and of course the background score. The music plays a huge role in building tension, making you feel like danger is lurking in every corner. I'll share insights on how sound design and background music elevate the experience and help deliver those jaw-dropping jump scares. Moving on, we'll break down the budget, how much the film cost to make and how much it earned at the box office. Was it a financial success? How did it perform compared to the other films in the franchise? We'll look at both the numbers and the audience response. Critics had their opinions, but fans often see things differently. And Final Destination 5 has built a loyal fan base over the years, thanks to its clever storytelling and memorable death scenes. Next up, let's talk about the characters. I'll introduce you to the full star cast and who played which role. We'll look at how the actors performed, which characters stood out, and how their personalities added tension, emotion, and even some dark humor to the film. Nicholas D'Agosto played the lead role of Sam, a guy who's trying to outrun fate while managing his complicated relationships. Emma Bell played Molly, his love interest, bringing both strength and vulnerability to her role. And of course, we can't forget the legendary Tony Todd, who appears once again as the mysterious coroner William Bloodworth, adding layers of mystery and dread to the story. Each actor brought something unique to the film, and we'll talk about what made their performances so compelling. And now for the fun part. Interesting facts, behind-the-scenes stories, and some hidden details you might have missed. For example, did you know that this film is secretly a prequel? Yes, there's a twist at the end that connects Final Destination 5 directly to the very first movie in the series. It's a brilliant move that left many fans shocked and impressed. We'll also explore how the filmmakers used visual clues and foreshadowing to hint at what's coming next. And if you're a fan of Easter eggs, you're going to love this section. So, friends, I highly recommend you watch this video till the end. There's so much to learn, so many secrets to uncover, and so much appreciation to give to the people who made this movie possible. Whether you're a horror enthusiast, a movie nerd, or just someone looking for something suspenseful and thrilling to watch, this video will give you everything you need to know about Final Destination 5. So sit back, relax, and let's get started on this chilling journey into the world of destiny, danger, and death's twisted sense of justice. Alright friends, let's jump straight into the terrifying roller coaster that is Final Destination 5, and trust me, the story takes off with a bang. Literally. It opens with what looks like an ordinary day, a company retreat, a bus full of co-workers crossing a massive suspension bridge. Seems harmless, right? But this is Final Destination, so you just know something's about to go very, very wrong. And boom, out of nowhere, the bridge begins to collapse in one of the most jaw-dropping opening disaster scenes ever. Metal twists, cars fall, people get crushed, and the chaos unfolds in brutal slow-motion detail. It's terrifying, cinematic, and sets the tone for everything that follows. But here's the twist. All of that destruction. It didn't happen. Not yet. It was a premonition. Our main character, Sam, has a vivid vision of the entire disaster and snaps out of it just in time to warn his friends. Thanks to his quick thinking, a small group of them escapes before the bridge collapses for real. You'd think escaping death would be a good thing, right? Not in this universe. Because death, in Final Destination lore, doesn't take no for an answer. And now that they've cheated their fate, death is coming back to set things right, one horrifying accident at a time. From here, the story follows a familiar pattern if you've seen the earlier films, but what's fun is how each character's death feels like a mini horror film of its own. The filmmakers play with your expectations constantly. You think you know how someone's going to die, then, nope, surprise twist. The tension comes not just from the deaths themselves, but from all the misdirection and suspense leading up to them. You're constantly on edge, scanning every object in the room. A swinging hook, a leaky gas pipe, a slippery floor. Everything feels like a threat. And that's what makes the narrative so thrilling. It's not just about the destination, pun intended. It's about the journey, the build-up, and the absolutely wild executions of each set piece. One of the most entertaining parts of the story is how the rules evolve. In earlier films, death's design was this mysterious, inevitable force. But in Final Destination 5, we get a twist on the formula. A character suggests that maybe, just maybe, if you kill someone else you can take their place in the life cycle, you can cheat death permanently. And that idea injects a whole new layer of moral complexity into the story. Now it's not just about surviving, it's about what people are willing to do to survive. This introduces tension within the group, as trust begins to crack. Suddenly you're not just afraid of accidents, you're afraid of the people around you. And let's talk about Sam for a second. He's not just some random guy trying to survive. He has a personal dream of becoming a chef and moving to Paris, and he's in a rocky relationship with his girlfriend Molly. Their dynamic gives the story a bit of heart, a touch of humanity amid all the blood and chaos. Their moments together, especially when Sam tries to protect her, make you root for them even harder. But again, this is Final Destination, so don't get too comfortable. Now here's where it gets really fun. As the story builds toward the climax, it feels like we're headed toward a dramatic but straightforward ending. But in classic horror fashion, the film has one last trick up its sleeve. Remember all those little clues you were probably ignoring? Suddenly they come together in a shocking twist that recontextualizes the entire movie. Without spoiling it, let's just say that the timeline you thought you were watching wasn't exactly what it seemed. The movie pulls a narrative sleight of hand that connects it directly to the very first Final Destination film. And when that final reveal hits, it lands like a gut punch. What makes this storytelling so clever is that it plays fair. The clues are there. The hints are subtle. But the filmmakers trust the audience to connect the dots. And that makes the payoff so satisfying. It's not just a cool twist. It's a brilliant reminder that in this franchise, nothing is ever just coincidence. It's all part of a larger, grim design. So the story of Final Destination 5 doesn't just follow the standard horror structure. It plays with your expectations, adds new rules to an old game, introduces moral dilemmas, and wraps it all in a tight, thrilling narrative that builds up to one of the most satisfying endings in the series. Every death, every decision, Every moment of tension is crafted to keep you both entertained and completely unsettled. And just when you think you've outsmarted the movie, it flips everything upside down and says, "Nice try, but death always wins." Let's talk about the characters of Final Destination 5, because even though people often come for the insane death scenes, it's the characters that really keep the story moving and give the chaos some actual emotional weight. What's fun about this film is that while it keeps the fast-paced horror energy alive, it still manages to give us a group of characters who feel distinct, each with their own quirks, tensions, relationships, and, yes, fates. Starting with Sam, our main guy. Now Sam isn't your typical horror lead who's just trying to stay alive. He actually has a goal outside of all the death and doom. He wants to become a professional chef and move to Paris. That alone makes him more interesting than your average scream and run protagonist. There's a subtle but solid arc with him. He starts off as a bit unsure, stuck in a desk job, drifting through life and a failing relationship with Molly. But once the bridge collapses and the death curse begins, you start to see him take charge, not just in surviving but in fighting for what he wants. His future, his love, his dreams. Sam grows from hesitant and passive to focused and protective, especially when it comes to Molly. By the time we reach the third act, he's no longer just reacting. He's choosing. He's making hard decisions. And in a franchise where characters often just run and panic, that makes him stand out. Then there's Molly, Sam's ex-girlfriend and emotional anchor. She's calm, rational, and brings a surprising amount of warmth to a movie that's otherwise filled with broken bones and flying shrapnel. What's cool about Molly is that she's not just there to scream or get rescued. She challenges Sam, calls him out, and reminds him what he's fighting for. Their relationship feels lived in with that classic "we've got history but we're still figuring it out" energy. And when they're placed in life or death situations together, that connection deepens. Their chemistry gives the story a pulse beyond the terror, which makes their fate hit harder. Now let's add Peter into the mix. Sam's friend and one of the most fascinating arcs in the film. Peter is the kind of character who starts off like the funny, slightly arrogant friend, but as the movie progresses and the deaths pile up, he slowly begins to unravel. And here's where things get dark. He's the one who really leans into the idea that you can cheat death by taking someone else's life. The shift in his personality is one of the most compelling parts of the movie. He goes from grieving and confused to desperate and dangerous. You can literally see the moral breakdown happening in real time. And what makes it so juicy is that his motivations make sense. He's scared, he's angry, and he doesn't want to die. That's human. The movie lets him fall and fall hard, which adds tension because now the threat isn't just death. It's also your own friend losing his grip on reality. Let's not forget Olivia, the girl with the laser eye surgery appointment from hell. Olivia brings sass, confidence, and a whole lot of attitude to the group. She's the kind of character you might assume is just there for comic relief or to be a throwaway early victim, but the film gives her just enough personality to make her memorable. You remember her confidence, her one-liners, and her tragic, terrifying death scene. And again, that's a theme with this movie. Even the smaller characters are sketched out just enough so that when they die, it's not just gore, it stings a little. Then there's Nathan, the blue-collar guy, cool and collected, but carrying quiet guilt. Nathan's story is more subtle than the others. He's not the loudest or the most dramatic, but his arc involves a shocking accidental death that throws him into a moral gray area. He becomes a key part of the whole kill or be killed dilemma, even if he never actively chooses to play that game. His moment is quieter, but it adds depth to the idea that death's plan is more complex than it seems. And of course, how can we not talk about the most mysterious character of all, William Bloodworth, played by the always eerie Tony Todd. He's not part of the main group, but his presence is huge. He's like the Grim Reaper spokesman, showing up with cryptic warnings and unsettling calm. The way he delivers his lines, slow and deliberate, makes your skin crawl. He doesn't change, he doesn't grow, but he doesn't need to. His role is to shake the characters to their core, to make them question everything. He's the harbinger of doom, but he also introduces the chilling idea that maybe, just maybe, you can beat the system if you're willing to cross a dark moral line. What's fun about all these characters is how their relationships affect their choices. They aren't just a group of random people thrown together. They're co-workers, friends, exes, rivals. Their connections add layers of tension and sometimes even moments of levity between the chaos. When characters fight or protect each other or argue over what to do next, it feels grounded. You believe these people existed before the movie started. And that's important in a film like this, because if you care even a little bit about the people on screen, every death hits harder. So while Final Destination 5 might be known for its spectacular kills and final twist, what really keeps the engine running is its characters. They're flawed, freaked out, sometimes funny, sometimes awful, but always engaging. You watch them fall apart, try to hold it together, make impossible choices, and in some cases completely break under pressure. And that, my friends, is what keeps this ride from being just a bloody countdown. It makes it a tense, character-driven thriller where death isn't the only enemy. Sometimes it's the fear inside them that really does the damage. Alright friends, let's dive into the performances of Final Destination 5, because while this franchise might be known for its jaw-dropping death scenes and elaborate setups, it's the actors who keep the whole thing grounded in something that feels real, even as death turns into a Rube Goldberg machine from hell. Let's start with Nicholas D'Agosto as Sam, our central character and low-key action hero of the movie. Nicholas brings a kind of everyman charm to the role. He's not flashy or over the top, but that's exactly what works. Sam isn't some superhuman. He's a regular guy with a job, a passion for cooking, and a girlfriend he's trying not to lose. Nicholas plays him with just the right balance of quiet determination and emotional vulnerability. You can see the gears turning in his head as he pieces things together, and when the panic starts to build, it doesn't feel like acting. It feels like genuine, sweaty-palmed terror. He reacts how most of us probably would. Confused, desperate, but doing his best to stay calm. It's a solid, grounded performance that gives the film its emotional center. Emma Bell as Molly is another highlight. She plays her character with a calm, centered energy that really stands out amid all the chaos. Molly could have easily been written as the typical horror love interest, just there to scream and get rescued, but Emma gives her more depth. She makes Molly feel like a real person, not just someone tagging along. There's a warmth to her performance, especially in her scenes with Sam, that gives the film an emotional backbone. She doesn't oversell the fear or the drama. She plays it with restraint, which weirdly makes it even more effective. When she's scared, you believe it. When she argues with Sam, it's not melodrama. It's two people with history trying to make sense of the madness around them. And then there's Miles Fisher as Peter. Now this guy brings the drama. His performance is like a slow-burn fire that turns into a full-blown blaze by the end of the film. At first, he seems like your typical sharp-dressed office guy. Confident, maybe a little cocky. But as things spiral and death starts knocking on their doors, Peter starts unraveling. And Miles absolutely nails the descent. He goes from sarcastic to broken to dangerous without missing a beat. His eyes start to carry that haunted, twitchy energy, and by the final act, he's not just a guy trying to survive. He's a guy who's terrified of dying and willing to go to dark places to avoid it. That desperation seeps into every line he delivers. He's intense, unpredictable, and honestly, one of the strongest performances in the entire franchise. David Koechner as Dennis adds a bit of flavor as the boss you kind of love to hate. He brings his signature sarcastic, blunt energy to the role, and while his character isn't deeply layered, he knows exactly what movie he's in and plays it with gusto. He's the guy who drops a one-liner even in the middle of disaster, and you need that kind of energy to cut through the tension. His timing is sharp, and even though he doesn't get a ton of screen time, he makes the most of every scene he's in. Jacqueline MacInnes Wood as Olivia brings a mix of confidence, attitude, and eventual terror. At first, she comes across as the one who doesn't care about anything, the bold, edgy coworker who's too cool for office drama. But when her turn comes, and she's staring down one of the most intense death setups in the series, Jacqueline delivers a full-body performance of fear. She takes Olivia from eye-rolling sarcasm to full-on panic in a way that feels very real. You see her facade crumble, and it's unsettling to watch. You may not have expected to care about her character, but thanks to her performance, you suddenly do. PJ Byrne as Isaac plays the comic relief, and he nails it. He's the kind of guy you expect to be annoying, but somehow he's entertaining instead. PJ brings just the right level of sleaze and smirk to the role, and while his character is the office creep who hits on everyone and probably shouldn't have survived the bridge collapse, you can't help but be amused. And when his number comes up, he sells the panic with flair. He shifts gears from goofy to terrified so convincingly that his big moment actually becomes one of the film's most memorable. Arlen Escarpita as Nathan is the steady hand in the group. His performance is more subtle, but that doesn't mean it's forgettable. Nathan doesn't get as much screen time as some of the others, but Arlen plays him with quiet strength. There's a moment where he's forced to deal with an accidental death, and his expression, the guilt, the disbelief, is so raw it lingers long after the scene ends. He brings this grounded presence that balances out the more emotional or explosive performances from the others. And of course we have to talk about the one and only Tony Todd as Bloodworth, the mysterious coroner who knows way too much about death and never smiles. Tony doesn't just play Bloodworth, he becomes him. He doesn't need to raise his voice, doesn't need to make big gestures. His deep, smooth voice and calculated stillness are enough to chill your bones. Every time he shows up, it feels like the rules of the universe are shifting. He delivers his cryptic lines with such eerie calm that you hang on every word, wondering what he's really saying. He's not in a lot of scenes, but he steals every single one. Together, the cast of Final Destination 5 doesn't just survive the plot, they bring it to life. Whether it's a slow descent into madness, a quiet moment of dread, or a full-on scream fest, every actor leans into the fear, the suspense, and the emotional beats that elevate the film from just another horror entry to something that actually feels like a story worth following. They're not just victims, they're people trying to outrun the impossible. And thanks to these performances, we feel every moment of that struggle. Let's talk about the person behind the curtain, the director of Final Destination 5, Steven Quale. Now, if you're wondering who that is, you're not alone. This was actually his feature film debut, and let me tell you, he came in swinging. Literally. With metal cables, collapsing bridges, and swinging gymnastics equipment. And what's so cool about his direction is that he didn't just try to keep up with the franchise's legacy. He took it up a notch with a slick, confident style that makes this one of the most visually tight and sharply executed entries in the whole series. From the opening scene, you can tell Quale knows exactly what kind of ride he's taking us on. The tone he sets is deceptively calm at first. A group of co-workers on a casual bus ride, light conversation, sunny skies. But there's this creeping sense of unease he layers in. It's in the way the camera lingers on small, innocent details. Tiny cracks in the bridge, a misplaced bolt, a suspicious shutter in the structure. He builds tension like a ticking clock. And then boom. The bridge collapse sequence kicks off. And this is where you see the full force of Quale's vision. The pacing, the framing, the sheer scale of destruction. It's a masterpiece of chaos. But here's the trick. It's not just loud and messy. It's precise. Every beat is timed for maximum impact. Every fall, every scream, every snap of steel is staged like a brutal ballet. And the way he uses slow motion during this scene. Genius. It doesn't just look cool. It makes you feel every second, stretching the terror out like a rubber band ready to snap. And then, plot twist, it's a premonition. So now the real story begins. And here's where the tone shifts again. Quale dials things down, but never too relaxed. He settles into this rhythm of constant unease. You're watching characters go through normal life stuff, talking about their futures, making decisions, arguing, bonding, but the whole time there's a dark cloud hanging over everything. That's where his direction really shines. He uses silence, stillness, and long takes to build suspense in the smallest moments. Flickering light, loose screw, a drip of water. Every ordinary detail is treated like it could be the start of someone's death scene, and you're never quite sure when it'll strike. Stylistically, Quale has a sharp eye for symmetry and framing. He often centers characters in the shot, giving a feeling of isolation, like they're being watched, marked by something they can't escape. And in the death sequences, his control is almost surgical. He doesn't just show things happening. He guides your attention. You see exactly what you need to see to build tension. Then he pulls back just enough to let your imagination run wild before delivering the final blow. It's like he's playing a psychological game with the audience. And he wins every time. There's also a fun sense of irony baked into how he stages the deaths. You think you've figured out what's going to go wrong, he wants you to think that. He sets up distractions, red herrings, fake-outs. And then when the real danger hits, it's always from a different angle than you expected. Keeps you guessing, keeps you tense, and most of all keeps you watching. That unpredictability is what makes his direction feel so alive. Now let's talk pacing. Some horror films drag when nothing's exploding or bleeding, but not this one. Quale keeps the pace tight throughout. There's always a sense of forward momentum, even in the quieter scenes. He spaces out the death sequences in a way that lets each one breathe and leave its mark, but he also gives time for the story to unfold and the characters to develop between the carnage. He's not just cutting from kill to kill. He's letting the dread build. That balance between action and atmosphere is tricky, but he nails it. The final act is where he really flexes his narrative muscles. Without spoiling anything, there's a reveal, a major one, that recontextualizes everything you've seen. And what's brilliant is how he directs toward that twist without ever making it obvious. You think you're watching one kind of story, but he's been laying breadcrumbs for another story the whole time. The rewatch value is off the charts because once you know what's coming, you realize how cleverly he wove it all together. And let's not forget, this was the first Final Destination film shot in 3D. And Quale uses that. Not just as a gimmick, but as part of the visual language of the film. Objects fly at the screen, sure, but more importantly, depth is used to make you feel like you're right there. When something breaks or flies loose or splinters, it feels like it's coming for you. It's immersive, unnerving, and totally effective. So whether it's the slick shot composition, the creepy quiet moments, or the wild chaos of the death scenes, Steven Quale's direction ties it all together with confidence and flair. He doesn't just direct a horror movie. He conducts a symphony of dread, misdirection, and beautifully executed mayhem. Let's talk about the real puppet master of Final Destination 5, the camera. It's not just there to capture death. It stalks it. From the very first frames, the cinematography teases you with visual clues, like a magician palming the card before the trick. The camera isn't a passive observer. It's a voyeur, almost complicit, lurking in corners, watching characters like it knows what's coming. Because let's face it, death's got a flair for drama, and so does this movie. Take the bridge collapse scene. Oh yes, that gloriously grotesque slow-motion symphony of doom. The way the camera floats across the bridge, catching twisted metal, panicked faces, and plummeting bodies in elegant arcs. It's like ballet, if ballet involved snapping cables and molten tar. The lens doesn't just show you the horror. It revels in it. Wide shots emphasize the sheer scale of destruction, but then bam! A tight close-up on a character's widening eyes, and you're suddenly right there with them, bracing for impact. It's chaos framed with precision. And let's talk lighting. The film's got this sleek, shadowy glow that makes everything feel just a little too clean, too sharp, like a surgical room right before something goes horribly wrong. The lighting in the acupuncture scene, for instance, is deliciously clinical. Everything is white and sterile, which only makes you more aware of the fragile little pins poking out of the poor guy's back. And when the lighting shifts, when the shadows start creeping in around the edges, it's like the room is holding its breath. The eye surgery scene. Now there's some devilish framing at play. The camera keeps cutting between the malfunctioning equipment and the girl's terrified face, but it never shows you exactly when things will go wrong. That's tension you can feel. The camera toys with you, lingers a second too long, pulls back when you think it's going to zoom in. It's like death itself is holding the camera, having a bit of fun. Framing is where this film gets especially wicked. It loves to isolate characters and shots, making them feel small, exposed, often boxed in by their surroundings. Literal foreshadowing, like they're already in a coffin. There's a rhythm to it too. Camera breathes. It slows down when you expect it to speed up, and then jolts forward right when you've let your guard down. That unpredictability, that's part of the game. But one of the sneakiest tricks. How the cinematography makes you think you're watching something safe. Characters walking down hallways, making toast, getting massages. Totally normal stuff. But the camera always lingers. On a dripping faucet, a loose screw, a precarious object dangling overhead. The audience becomes a detective, scanning the frame for clues, while the camera quietly smirks in the background, knowing it's already too late. In Final Destination 5, the cinematography doesn't just capture the horror, it orchestrates it. Every tilt, pan, and zoom feels deliberate, calculated. It's not just showing you death, it's flirting with it. And that's what makes it such a twistedly beautiful thing to watch. Editing in Final Destination 5 is like death with a stopwatch. Precise, sharp, and always on time. This movie doesn't just move. It glides, sprints, creeps, and pounces depending on what the moment demands. It's got a pulse, and the editing is the heartbeat, setting the tempo for every scare, scream, and splatter. Let's start with how the film opens. The pacing doesn't waste a second before winding you up. That bridge premonition sequence is pure chaos ballet. The editing slices from one moment of disaster to another with this incredible urgency, but never lets it fall into incoherence. You're watching people fall, twist, burn, and smash, and somehow it all makes sense. Every cut lands like a punchline in a very, very dark joke. What makes it even better? The way it slows down just enough to make you feel the gravity, literally, of the situation. It's like watching time dilate as the characters spiral into oblivion, and the editor is clearly having the time of their life. After that explosive beginning, the pacing shifts gears, but smoothly. There's no awkward jolt from action to exposition. The film breathes, lets you think you're safe, only to ratchet up the tension again. Conversations are snappy, trimmed down to the essentials, but still given enough space so you can catch a whiff of who these doomed folks are. The transitions between scenes are mostly seamless. There's this invisible thread stitching everything together, making sure nothing feels too choppy or disjointed. Even when scenes cut between different locations, it flows like a river, with the occasional waterfall of panic. Now, the editing really shows off during those iconic death sequences. These aren't just set pieces, they're rituals. The editors stretch time, draw out the dread. You get these prolonged setups. Shots of fans wobbling, screws coming loose, mysterious liquids creeping toward danger, and you know something's coming, but you don't know when. The rhythm plays a cruel game. There's a pattern to the pacing that builds suspense, then suddenly, wham! Everything happens at once. A character blinks, and their face meets an industrial-grade laser beam. Or a gymnast takes a wrong step, and the screen becomes a blender of bones and padding. It's so fast, but it's clean. You never lose sight of what's happening, even when everything's flying in 100 directions. What really keeps the film engaging is how the editing balances stillness with shock. It knows not to sprint the whole time. There are those quiet moments, someone brushing their teeth, walking into work, tying their shoe, and the edits slow down, let the viewer marinate in that uncomfortable something's off feeling. It's deliciously manipulative. And just when you settle into that calm, just when your guard starts to drop, the pacing hits the gas and throws you headfirst into another death trap. Even in the film's more dialogue-heavy stretches, the editing keeps things moving with rhythm and efficiency. There's a snappiness to conversations like nobody has time to linger, which in this world they absolutely don't. You get the sense that time is ticking, always in the background. It's not just storytelling, it's a countdown. There's also a sly bit of foreshadowing woven into the edit cuts themselves. The way the film jumps from object to object during quiet moments isn't just stylish, it's a warning. Each cut is a breadcrumb, leading your eyes and your paranoia to places they don't want to go. It's the editor whispering, "Hey, look here, and now over here. Yeah, that's going to matter in about 5 minutes." So no, Final Destination 5 never drags. Doesn't rush either. Just knows when to breathe, when to sprint, when to explode. It's got rhythm. It's got timing. And when it's working its best, it doesn't just tell you a story. It hurls you through it like a roller coaster with loose bolts and no brakes. In Final Destination 5, the soundtrack and score are like the unseen hand guiding you through a haunted funhouse, never fully visible but always present, always pushing you toward the next horrifying surprise. This isn't a movie that leans on sweeping orchestras or showy, hummable themes. No, this score is more sinister, more restrained, and far more cunning. It's not trying to entertain, it's trying to unsettle. The music slinks through the film like a shadow you can't shake, amplifying every flicker of dread, every nervous glance, every moment where the audience instinctively knows, this is not going to end well. The soundscape is built on tension. Raw, stretched-thin tension. You hear these throbbing low-frequency rumbles underneath seemingly normal scenes, and it makes your skin crawl before anything even happens. It's like the music knows something you don't and is trying to warn you without actually saying it. These bass-heavy murmurs, eerie atmospheric textures, and jarring metallic screeches are layered with surgical precision. Sometimes it sounds like a heartbeat, sometimes like a dying machine, but it always keeps you on edge. It's the musical equivalent of a sharp inhale that never gets exhaled. And then comes the silence, the pure, weaponized silence. This film knows the power of muting the music at the most excruciating moments. The absence of sound becomes a character all its own. You're sitting there, watching a character obliviously prepare for their doom, maybe brushing their teeth or getting ready for a laser eye procedure, and the score vanishes. No music. Just the ticking of a clock, the buzz of a fluorescent light, the whisper of something very wrong in the air. It's agonizing. Your ears strain for any hint of sound, and your brain goes into overdrive, trying to predict when the tension will snap. And then, without warning, the score returns. Sharp, violent, merciless. It's like the soundtrack has been waiting, hiding in the shadows, just to lunge at you in the worst possible moment. There are recurring sonic motifs too. Not full-blown themes, but fractured, ghostly patterns that drift in and out of scenes like echoes from another dimension. Sometimes it's a single sustained note that bends unnaturally. Sometimes it's a cluster of dissonant strings that flicker in and out, like a swarm of musical wasps. These motifs don't tell you what to feel, they infect how you feel. They reappear subtly, not to remind you of a character or a moment, but to make you feel like the past horrors are bleeding into the present. You start to hear them before a death scene and realize the film has trained you like Pavlov's dog. Score equals doom. When the film goes full throttle, especially during the major disaster sequences like the bridge collapse or the factory fire, the score shifts gears. Suddenly it's chaos. Percussion pounding like a stampede, strings whipping like electrical wires, digital effects screaming through the mix like tearing metal. It mirrors the destruction without overpowering it, and somehow makes it feel even more visceral. The score doesn't just accompany the carnage, it's fused to it. You're not just watching a character fall to their death, you're hearing every twist of fate and snap of bone in musical form. The movie also plays clever games with diegetic sound, music that exists within the world of the film. Picture a scene where a peppy pop song is playing on a car radio while someone is fiddling with a coffee cup that's about to spill into electrical wiring. It's that horrifying irony. Something cheerful, even upbeat, layered right on top of a death trap being set in motion. This kind of tonal dissonance is used to deliciously twisted effect. You're laughing nervously 1 second and gasping the next. The score manipulates that shift in emotional tone without ever breaking a sweat. Even the placement of sound cues is strategic. Creak here. A drip there. A high-pitched whine that doesn't stop. These aren't just spooky add-ons, they're pressure points. The filmmakers know exactly how long to hold a note before cutting it off, how long to wait before the next crash of sound. It's rhythm, but not the kind that makes you tap your foot. It makes you clutch the armrest. Every single element of the soundtrack is curated to toy with your expectations. You're lulled into moments of calm only to be jolted by a sudden sting of sound. The score doesn't simply support the story. It anticipates it, reacts to it, twists it. It feels alive, like an extension of the film's central villain, death itself. Quiet 1 minute, thunderous the next, always one step ahead. So while Final Destination 5 may be known for its inventive kills and insane set pieces, don't underestimate the invisible maestro behind the madness. The soundtrack and score are the psychological glue holding the terror together. It's not about melody, it's about manipulation. And it does its job perfectly, keeping you uncomfortable, breathless, and completely at the mercy of every note, pause, and chilling crescendo. Final Destination 5 might present itself as a slick, blood-soaked thrill ride where death is a Rube Goldberg machine with a grudge, but beneath all the steel rods, splattered organs, and cracked skulls lies a surprisingly grim and thought-provoking exploration of themes that cut far deeper than flesh. This isn't just a story about people dying. It's a story about what it means to die, what it means to survive, and whether we ever truly have a say in either. At the heart of the film is the theme of inevitability, and it's presented with the kind of poetic cruelty only this franchise dares to deliver. Death isn't a killer here, it's a system. Impersonal, flawless, and completely indifferent. It doesn't stalk its victims with a machete or a chainsaw. It rearranges furniture, tips over coffee cups, knocks loose a bolt, or redirects the breeze through a cracked window. It's not just terrifying, it's casual. And that's where the fear lives. The idea that no matter how hard you try, no matter how fast you run or how clever you think you are, something as ordinary as a gymnastics beam or a leaking AC unit could be your executioner. The film doesn't scream, "Death is coming." It whispers, "You were never safe." That existential dread permeates every frame, leaving characters and the audience constantly questioning if there's any escape from a fate that's already been written in invisible ink. But Final Destination 5 adds an intriguing philosophical wrinkle to the franchise formula. The idea that fate might be negotiable, for a price. Enter the chilling suggestion that if you take someone else's life, you might steal their remaining time and escape your own scheduled death. Suddenly, the film is no longer just a cat-and-mouse game between survivors and fate. It becomes a moral battlefield. The question shifts from "Will I survive?" to "What am I willing to do to survive?" It's a brutally effective twist that transforms the characters from passive victims into morally compromised opportunists. You can practically see the weight of the choice settle into their bones as they contemplate murder not as malice, but as insurance. This creates a warped survival of the fittest scenario where humanity becomes a currency, and the only way to cash out is to destroy someone else's account. This leads straight into the theme of control, or rather, the illusion of it. Every character in the film is scrambling to assert control over their destiny. They plan, they watch for signs, they try to game the system. But the harder they fight to reclaim agency, the more tightly the noose tightens. It's like trying to swim against a riptide made of inevitability. The movie almost delights in showing how irrelevant human effort is when set against the grandeur of a design so intricately cruel. The deeper message is clear. Control is a myth we tell ourselves to feel better. The real boss. And it doesn't take suggestions. The film also takes a surprisingly thoughtful detour into guilt and psychological erosion. These characters didn't just survive a freak accident, they escaped death, and that knowledge haunts them like a persistent fever. It's not survivor's euphoria. It's survivor's curse. You can see it in the way their optimism decays scene by scene, the way their smiles crack and their nerves fray. They're living on stolen time, and that awareness eats at them. The emotional fallout is subtle but ever-present, and it adds a heavy dose of tragedy to the carnage. The movie doesn't need long speeches or therapy sessions to explore trauma. It lets the paranoia do the talking. Every time a character jumps at a shadow or studies the world like it's booby-trapped, because it is, it reinforces the psychological cost of cheating death. Then there's the theme of cosmic design, which the film weaves through visual motifs and narrative structure. Everything in this world feels interconnected, almost orchestrated. A fan doesn't just blow air. It knocks over a pencil that rolls into a gear that triggers a catastrophe. A speck of dust isn't just dust. It's part of a chain reaction. This isn't randomness. It's design. The characters begin to interpret the world through that lens, scanning their surroundings for hidden meaning, as if they're caught in some deranged version of divine order. The film encourages this obsession. It builds scenes with slow, deliberate tension, drawing your eye to insignificant objects until they start to feel like omens. It's a terrifying idea. What if the universe isn't chaotic at all? What if it's perfectly ordered, and you're just not supposed to be here? The film's ultimate twist, without giving too much away, adds a layer of temporal horror. The idea that everything, even your understanding of time itself, can be turned against you. It loops back on itself in a way that is both clever and soul-crushing. The message lands like a sledgehammer. You were never ahead of the game. You were always part of it. And the house always wins. Even the deaths themselves, as over-the-top as they are, serve a thematic function. They're not just shock value. They're metaphors for the fragility of life and the randomness of demise. A gymnast doesn't just slip and fall. She's obliterated in an instant after a dozen tiny, meaningless missteps. It's a visual reminder of how quickly everything can go from fine to fatal. The absurdity of the deaths underlies the film's darkest theme. Life has no warning signs. You can prepare all you want, but the final destination is the same for everyone. So while on the surface Final Destination 5 is a blood-soaked carnival of imaginative deaths, underneath the chaos is a sobering, even philosophical meditation on existence. It's about the futility of resistance, the weight of guilt, the cruelty of choice, and the seductive lie of control. It's a film that makes you laugh nervously, jump involuntarily, and think uncomfortably. Because once the credits roll and the gore fades, what lingers isn't just the sound of bones snapping. It's the whisper that none of us know exactly when our final destination will arrive, but it's already written in the script. In Final Destination 5, the visual effects and CGI don't just show up to the party. They throw the party, burn the house down, and then pull you into the smoldering wreckage with a sinister grin. This is a film where the visual effects aren't background flourishes or subtle enhancements. They are central to the film's identity. The entire cinematic universe hinges on the domino effect of deadly detail, where every object, no matter how mundane, is one malfunction away from becoming a murder weapon. And the film's visual toolkit, utterly relentless. Let's talk about that bridge collapse. The cinematic equivalent of kicking off a concert with a pyrotechnic explosion and then casually tossing the band into the audience. This sequence is the centerpiece, the crown jewel, the cataclysmic ballet of CGI chaos that immediately sets the tone. It's a digital spectacle drenched in danger. You've got steel beams slicing through buses, asphalt buckling like crumpled paper, and characters plummeting to their doom with disturbing velocity. The CGI here doesn't whisper. It roars. It's big, bold, and completely unapologetic. And yet, despite all the digital wizardry on display, it's not just about flash. There's a weight to the destruction, a choreography to the chaos that keeps it immersive rather than laughable. The textures, sizzling metal, falling glass, the uncanny physics of collapsing architecture, all work together to make the viewer feel like they're watching something that's horrifyingly plausible, even if the reality says otherwise. And that's where Final Destination 5 succeeds so well. The CGI isn't just about making things look cool, it's about building tension. It's about playing with your perception of safety. The visual effects often begin with restraint. A flicker in a fluorescent light. A bead of sweat. A screw loosening a millimeter. You lean in, unsure of where it's going. Then, asterisk boom asterisk. A freak chain of events turns the everyday into the extraordinary. The best deaths don't come out of nowhere. They sneak up on you with a slow, simmering build-up made possible by a blend of precise digital elements and clever camera work. One of the film's strongest visual strategies is its use of hyperrealism. That is, the world feels like ours but ever so slightly exaggerated. Colors are a bit richer, shadows a bit deeper, movement just a little too smooth or too sudden. It's like watching reality through a haunted magnifying glass. The CGI plays into this by giving the film a dreamlike logic, where objects move in ways that feel natural, until they don't. When a cable whips across a scene or a nail gun misfires, it looks plausible, but not quite real. This creates a strange visual dissonance that keeps your nerves buzzing. Your brain senses something's off, but you're too mesmerized to look away. Let's not forget how the film uses depth and motion to keep you on edge. The camera often moves with fluidity, tracking objects in 3D space as they ricochet, fall, or spin toward doom. During the acupuncture scene, for instance, we see the delicate placement of needles, the careful balance of tension, only for all of it to unravel into a visual disaster that's as horrifying as it is absurd. The CGI is razor-sharp, guiding your eye to every movement, every twitch, every object waiting to betray its purpose. It's like death is a stage director, and every misplaced tool is an actor waiting for their cue. But the digital artistry doesn't operate in a vacuum. The real brilliance of Final Destination 5 is how seamlessly it weaves practical effects into its visual tapestry. This isn't a green screen free-for-all. The filmmakers know exactly when to let the tactile realism of practical gore take over. When a character lands face first into a boat mast or gets crushed in a collapsing warehouse, the aftermath isn't just digitally splattered, it's physically felt. The blood, the broken bones, the shattered glass. It's not just spectacle, it's texture. You can almost feel the crunch. The CGI gets you to the moment, but it's the practical effects that make you recoil. This blend is most evident in the film's now infamous deaths, where objects that were digitally manipulated seconds earlier are suddenly very real as they make contact. A wrench flying through the air. Digitally rendered. The resulting skull trauma. All practical goo and prosthetics. This partnership between digital and physical keeps the visuals grounded, which is essential when you're showing someone get incinerated by hot oil or bisected by a rogue suspension cable. Now there are a few hiccups here and there. Occasionally, the digital characters look a little floaty, especially in fast-moving or wide shots. A tumbling body might spin a bit too perfectly, or a car might collapse in a way that feels more simulated than devastating. But those moments are fleeting and often forgiven because the movie wants to live in that uncanny space. The goal isn't photorealism, it's hyperreality. The fact that the effects almost look real is part of what makes them disturbing. They don't feel fake. They feel wrong. Kilter. Like watching a dream twist into a nightmare. And speaking of nightmares, the film uses lighting and digital enhancements to great atmospheric effect. There's a coldness to the visuals. A slightly metallic sheen to everything. Shadows are deep, reflective surfaces seem sharper, and danger always feels like it's just outside the frame. Even when nothing's happening, the visuals tell you, something's about to. The visual tone feels engineered to trigger anxiety. You're not just watching people die, you're anticipating it. The CGI becomes a kind of countdown clock, ticking invisibly with every unnatural breeze or misplaced wire. Ultimately, the visual effects in Final Destination 5 aren't about subtlety. They're about spectacle with strategy. They grab you by the eyeballs and drag you through a theme park of doom, all while reminding you that the most terrifying things don't always come with a warning sign. In this world, the digital and the practical are locked in a deadly waltz, orchestrated by an unseen force with a sense of humor and a penchant for brutal irony. And the result? A film where every light fixture, fan blade, or spilled coffee is just a few frames away from turning into your worst nightmare, rendered in high definition, full throttle, and unapologetically gleeful destruction. The set design and locations in Final Destination 5 don't just provide context. They're the lurking villains of the story, hiding in plain sight, biding their time. Nothing in this world is ever just a location. A gymnasium isn't just a gym. It's a precision-crafted arena of potential death. An office isn't a boring workspace. It's a minefield of glass shards, dangling cables, and unstable lighting fixtures. The entire production design operates with a wicked sort of creativity, turning the most mundane environments into silent accomplices of fate. If you thought your everyday routine was safe, Final Destination 5 gleefully reminds you that death has floor plans and blueprints too. Let's dig deeper into that bridge. It's not just the setting for the movie's jaw-dropping opening sequence. It's the first real character we meet. A suspension bridge under repair, high above a roaring river, with construction scaffolding, safety cones, and just enough fog to make everything seem a bit more unsteady. What makes the bridge work so well isn't just the visual grandeur, but the layers of detail baked into it. The setting doesn't feel fantastical. Feels real. It has the grimy textures of rusting steel, weather-beaten concrete, and half-worn caution tape. You believe this place exists. And because it feels real, the destruction feels even more jarring. The plummeting vehicles, the snapping cables, the collapsing asphalt. It's not spectacle for the sake of spectacle. It's carnage grounded in a terrifyingly believable environment. The set has weight, and when it falls apart, it takes your nerves with it. The film continues this design logic throughout, always grounding the horror in realism. Take the factory where Sam and his co-workers spend their days. It's not exaggerated or overly stylized. It's gray, mechanical, and brimming with casual dangers. Everything feels Oceanon compliant in the most plausible way. You've got conveyor belts humming in the background, molten steel bubbling in vats, sharp tools lying just a little too close to the edge of workbenches. It's so ordinary that it becomes unnerving. And that's the genius. Nothing feels designed to look scary. It all looks functional. But because of what you know about the franchise, and how the camera lingers just a moment too long on a forklift or a hanging chain, you start to see everything differently. Props become potential weapons. Machinery becomes murder machinery. The tension is in the waiting, knowing it's not if the factory turns against someone, but when. Then there's the spa setting during the laser eye surgery sequence. Clean, minimalist, full of white and chrome. At first glance, it feels like a calming, sterile environment, free from chaos. But that's exactly the trap. The production design plays a visual prank on the audience. It makes you lower your guard. Everything feels too neat, too polished. The reclining chair, the soft glow of the laser equipment, the gentle hum of machines. It's all there to make you think, nothing bad could happen in a place this nice. And then, bit by bit, the design starts to shift in your mind. The headgear looks a little too tight. The wires seem too exposed. The angle of the laser, was that always pointed that low? Suddenly, this pristine clinic feels like a dungeon. A single spark of malfunction turns spa luxury into body horror. The props haven't changed, the way you see them has. That's the power of smart, sinister production design. The gymnastics center is another brilliant location. Bright lights, vibrant mats, kids practicing flips in the background. It looks like the least threatening place on earth. And yet, the second the camera starts drifting toward a screw on a balance beam, your brain kicks into overdrive. Every piece of equipment becomes a loaded gun. The taut cords of a high bar, the slippery surface of a springboard, the soft landing pit that may conceal a deadly surprise. The set design invites you to play detective, daring you to guess what will go wrong first. But the beauty is you're never right. It's not the obvious thing. It's never just the wobbly beam. It's the chain reaction that starts with it. The set design is like a magician's table, full of distraction, misdirection, and sleight of hand. You think you're safe, and then suddenly, you're staring down the barrel of disaster. Even quieter, transitional settings, offices, apartments, elevators, are treated with the same meticulous care. The design team packs these spaces with visual cues. A ceiling fan spins just a little too fast. A coffee mug sits precariously close to a keyboard. A framed photo hangs slightly askew. These are subtle, near-invisible choices, but they plant a seed of anxiety. They make you hyper-aware of your surroundings. It's a rare film where even a paper shredder or a coat rack can make you break out in a sweat. The props are placed with surgical precision. The furniture is more than background. It's potential doom dressed in IKEA's finest. The funeral home deserves special mention. It's drenched in old wood, dark lighting, and cold air. But it never leans into cliché Gothic horror. It's subdued, tasteful, but always a little too quiet. The props, urns, caskets, drapes, are just a breath away from becoming tools in death's ongoing plan. The setting carries the weight of inevitability, as if the building itself knows the characters are doomed and is just waiting to house their remains. Lighting, again, plays a massive role in how these sets come alive, or more accurately, how they quietly plot the characters' deaths. Industrial scenes are cold, with harsh fluorescent lighting that highlights sharp corners and metal textures. Personal spaces, like apartments or offices, have warmer lighting that creates contrast and false comfort. You want to feel safe, but the lighting subtly betrays you. A shadow on a staircase. A flicker of a hallway bulb. Nothing is ever quite right. That unease is baked directly into the environment. In the end, the brilliance of Final Destination 5's production design lies in its restraint. It doesn't scream at you. It whispers. It hides threats in plain sight. The world of the film looks just like ours, but viewed through a cracked mirror. Every location, every object, every light fixture or doorknob or cup of coffee, everything becomes suspect. Everything becomes part of death's elaborate setup. The settings don't just support the story, they are the story. And in a film where death is invisible and inevitable, the environment becomes the one thing we can see. And it's terrifying. In Final Destination 5, the dialogue and script unfold with a rhythm that keeps you glued to the screen, blending naturalistic conversations with a sharp edge of foreboding that's impossible to ignore. The writers clearly understand that this isn't a film about verbose speeches or deep existential monologues. It's about survival, fear, and the desperate attempts of characters to outwit fate. So, the dialogue is tight, purposeful, and packed with an energy that mirrors the relentless ticking clock hanging over every scene. The conversations between characters feel surprisingly grounded, almost like snippets of overheard dialogue in a crowded cafe or a workplace break room. They chatter, joke, argue, and sometimes snap at each other with a realism that breaks through the supernatural premise. This grounding makes the extraordinary elements, the curse, the death designs, feel that much more chilling because the characters themselves seem like real people caught in a nightmare. The way they talk about their fears, their skepticism, or the creeping inevitability of death pulls the audience deeper into their predicament, making every uttered word feel like a brush with doom. What's particularly compelling is how the script skillfully layers in moments of sharp wit and dark humor amid the horror. The characters frequently use sarcasm and snark to cut through the tension, which serves two purposes. It humanizes them, and it gives the audience a moment to exhale before the next jarring event. For example, when faced with bizarre, seemingly random accidents, the survivors often exchange quips that reveal both disbelief and a coping mechanism. It's a clever writing choice because horror without any relief can become suffocating, and here, the humor feels earned and genuine rather than forced. However, the script doesn't shy away from giving characters moments of raw emotional weight. When the veneer of bravado slips, the dialogue dives into vulnerability, regret, and panic. These scenes are often quieter but packed with intensity, giving the audience glimpses into the psychological toll the curse takes on each person. The words exchanged in these moments carry a palpable weight. Questions about fate, the unfairness of dying young, or the haunting sense of helplessness. This emotional depth adds layers to what might otherwise be a straightforward horror flick, and makes the stakes feel heartbreakingly real. One of the film's strengths lies in its memorable lines. Simple, punchy phrases that stick with you because they encapsulate the film's central themes. Lines like "You can't cheat death" or "Death isn't done with us yet" evolve beyond mere dialogue to become chilling refrains that echo throughout the movie. The repetition of these lines serves as a grim reminder and creates a unifying thread, binding the characters' fates together and amplifying the suspense. They're not poetic or grandiose, but their power lies in their stark inevitability. The pacing of the dialogue is expertly tuned to the film's fast-moving narrative. Quick, clipped exchanges dominate the scenes of rising tension and action, maintaining a breathless momentum. When the story pauses for reflection or explanation, the dialogue slows down just enough to provide clarity without losing energy or dragging. This balance keeps the audience invested, avoiding the pitfall of heavy exposition or slow-moving conversations that can stall thrillers. It's a tightrope walk that the script manages with skill, allowing information about the supernatural curse and death's design to be delivered organically through character interaction. Another subtle yet brilliant aspect is how the dialogue builds mystery and suspense. The characters often speak in half-truths, questions, and guesses that reveal their confusion and fear, rather than certainty. This technique draws the audience in, inviting viewers to piece together clues alongside the characters. Every question asked, every hesitation spoken aloud, becomes a breadcrumb leading deeper into the mystery of who will die next and how. The writing is like a puzzle, carefully crafted to maintain intrigue and heighten anxiety. Even the supporting cast contributes significantly to the richness of the dialogue. Minor characters are given distinct voices that add authenticity and texture to the world. Whether it's a skeptic dismissing the curse with a sarcastic remark or a terrified survivor grappling with their fate, their lines feel deliberate and true to their personalities. This attention to detail ensures the ensemble feels like a real group caught in extraordinary circumstances, rather than caricatures or mere plot devices. The script also cleverly plays with the idea that words themselves carry power in this story. Characters' attempts to rationalize, deny, or bargain with death come through their conversations, making dialogue a battleground of belief versus fatalism. It's a fascinating dynamic. Speech is both a shield and a surrender. Every plea, argument, or desperate bargain uttered adds to the film's atmosphere of claustrophobic tension. In the end, the dialogue and script of Final Destination 5 work like clockwork, precise, relentless, and full of subtle nuance. They serve the story's unique tone, mixing horror with thriller pacing and a dash of dark comedy. The characters feel real and relatable, their conversations crackle with tension and humor, and their words hang heavy with the shadow of impending doom. It's a screenplay that knows its audience, respects their intelligence, and delivers lines that stay lodged in your mind long after the final scene fades to black. Final Destination 5 strolls into the horror genre like a savvy veteran who knows every trick in the book but isn't afraid to shuffle the deck and deal out some fresh cards. It's a film that respects its roots, leaning heavily on the established rules and tropes of horror thrillers, yet it breathes new life into them with clever twists, unexpected moments, and a refined sense of style that keeps the familiar feeling exciting rather than tired. It's like a genre-savvy storyteller who knows the audience's expectations inside and out, and then delights in subverting them just enough to keep everyone guessing. The cornerstone of the Final Destination franchise, which this fifth installment sticks to with proud determination, is the concept of fate as an unstoppable force. It's that old but gold trope. A group of people cheat death in a freak accident only to find that death has a detailed, intricate ledger and it's coming back to collect. This fatalistic premise is classic horror thriller territory, and it could easily slide into cliché, but Final Destination 5 dances on the edge without falling off. The film fully embraces this inevitability, making the looming presence of death a near character in itself. Silent, patient, and brutal. What sets this film apart in terms of genre execution is how it turns the usual death scenes into imaginative, almost artistic sequences of calamity. These aren't just quick jump scares or cheap thrills. They're meticulously crafted set pieces that resemble twisted domino effects where one small mishap cascades into a deadly conclusion. The film treats these moments like puzzle pieces that fit together into a larger tapestry of suspense, each death scene escalating the creativity and shock factor. This elevates the typical horror trope of character dies in a gruesome way into something much more engaging and immersive. You find yourself leaning in, trying to anticipate the next chain reaction, appreciating the craftsmanship as much as the terror. The pacing of the film plays a crucial role in balancing genre expectations. It's fast enough to keep your heart pounding and eyes glued to the screen, but it also knows when to slow down to build atmosphere and tension. This ebb and flow of energy is a hallmark of good suspense filmmaking, and Final Destination 5 executes it flawlessly. The film never lets you relax for too long. Just when you think you've caught your breath, it pulls the rug out from under you with a sudden, shocking death or a chilling twist. This rhythm keeps the audience emotionally hooked, cycling between adrenaline rushes and moments of nervous anticipation. Humor, surprisingly, plays a key role in how the film navigates its genre. While horror often takes itself too seriously or leans too heavily on gore, this installment injects a streak of dark, sarcastic humor that provides welcome relief and depth. The survivors' quips and ironic remarks aren't just throwaway lines. They serve as a coping mechanism, a way for characters to assert some control and humanity in a situation that's spiraling out of control. This balance of humor and horror makes the film's tone more complex and the characters more relatable. It's as if the film winks at the audience, acknowledging the absurdity of fate's twisted game while still playing it straight enough to keep the scares genuine. When it comes to subverting genre conventions, the film takes some interesting risks. The characters aren't mere fodder for the killer. They're given more nuanced personalities and motivations than what's typical in many horror flicks. This attention to character development means their fear, denial, and moments of hope feel earned rather than scripted. The audience isn't just watching a string of deaths. They're invested in who these people are and what losing them means, which adds a layer of emotional weight uncommon in this type of film. This dramatic depth enriches the genre experience, making it about more than just the spectacle of death. The mythology of death's design, a kind of supernatural, meticulously planned sequence of fatal events, is handled with surprising sophistication. Instead of dumping heavy exposition, the film weaves this concept naturally into the narrative, letting the rules and implications unfold through the characters' actions and discoveries. This approach keeps the mystery alive and respects the audience's intelligence, making the supernatural element feel both plausible within the film's world and endlessly intriguing. It transforms the genre's typical monster or killer trope into an invisible but ever-present force, which is a refreshing twist on how horror antagonists are usually portrayed. Of course, the film doesn't completely avoid clichés. You'll find the skeptical skeptic, the frantic warnings that go unheeded, and the ever-looming sense of inescapable doom. But what Final Destination 5 does well is to acknowledge these clichés with a self-awareness that keeps them from becoming stale or predictable. Sometimes it leans into these tropes with a wink, other times it twists them in unexpected ways. This self-aware playfulness adds a meta layer to the film, making it fun for genre fans who appreciate a film that knows the game it's playing. The blend of genres within the film is impressively smooth. The action scenes deliver on thrills without overshadowing the suspense. The horror moments hit hard but are balanced by enough humor and character beats to prevent emotional burnout. The drama deepens the stakes without dragging the pace. This genre fusion works because the film trusts the audience to handle shifts in tone and intensity, creating a dynamic viewing experience that's always engaging and rarely predictable. In the grand scheme, Final Destination 5 respects its genre origins while carving out its own identity through inventive death sequences, clever pacing, a nuanced script, and a balanced mix of horror, suspense, humor, and drama. It doesn't just recycle familiar ideas. It retools and refreshes them with style and wit, making the film feel like both a classic horror thriller and a modern self-aware take on the genre. Whether you're there for the scares, the inventive kills, or the dark humor, the film delivers all of it with a knowing grin, proving that even well-worn genre conventions can still surprise and entertain when handled with care and creativity. Final Destination 5 may not wear its social and cultural commentary on its sleeve, but beneath the blood-soaked surface, it's quietly channeling some surprisingly sharp observations about the modern world. Instead of hitting you over the head with a political agenda or moral lesson, the film slips these ideas in smoothly, like an undercurrent pulling at the edges of the suspenseful story. It's the kind of movie that lets you scream at the screen one moment and then, upon reflection, realize it's been whispering something about our collective anxieties all along. One of the most compelling themes woven into the film is the tension between control and chaos, a theme that resonates strongly in today's fast-paced, hyper-organized culture. In an era obsessed with planning, data tracking, and risk management, the film's premise, that death is an unstoppable force no matter how much you try to cheat it, feels like a metaphor for the limits of human control. We live in a world where technology promises to predict, prevent, and perfect, yet chaos lurks just beneath the surface, ready to upend our carefully laid plans in an instant. The film taps into that deep, almost primal fear that no matter how much we try to control our environment, there's always an unpredictable force, like fate, death, or bad luck, that can snap our fragile sense of security in two. This idea of fate's inescapability doesn't just serve as a plot device. It mirrors the modern cultural experience of unpredictability, whether it's global events, pandemics, economic upheaval, or environmental disasters that often feel beyond our control. The characters' frantic attempts to understand and outrun death echo the way society tries to make sense of, and survive, forces larger than ourselves. The film captures this zeitgeist without being heavy-handed, turning a supernatural thriller into a kind of cultural metaphor about how fragile and vulnerable life really is beneath all the surface-level stability. Another layer of social commentary comes through in how the film portrays risk and responsibility. The survivors' constant questioning, why them, why now, what could they have done differently, reflects a cultural obsession with accountability. In a world where people demand explanations and assign blame when tragedy strikes, Final Destination 5 highlights how sometimes bad things happen for reasons that defy logic or justice. The film gently critiques this impulse by showing that the survivor's fate isn't about moral failing or human error, but about an indifferent cosmic balance sheet that cannot be cheated. This challenges the audience to think about how we process tragedy, whether we accept randomness or cling to the need for meaning and control. The settings and scenarios themselves also make a subtle commentary on modern life's banality and hidden dangers. Many of the film's deadly sequences take place in everyday environments: factories, highways, office buildings, spaces that feel mundane but are laced with hidden threats. This choice reflects the cultural anxiety that danger isn't confined to the scary or exotic places but can strike anywhere, including the most routine parts of daily life. It's a reminder that the veneer of normalcy is thin and that beneath the surface of our orderly, controlled worlds lies a chaotic, unpredictable reality. This plays into a broader cultural conversation about workplace safety, the pace of modern living, and how often we underestimate risks in environments we think we know well. The film's characters and their interactions add another dimension to the social commentary, particularly around community, trust, and isolation in contemporary culture. The survivor's ordeal forces them into a kind of reluctant fellowship, strangers bound together by shared fate and fear. Their struggles with communication, mistrust, and cooperation mirror larger societal tensions about individualism versus community. In a culture that often celebrates self-reliance and independence, the film shows how survival can depend on connection, empathy, and collective action. Yet, the pressure of impending doom also exposes fractures, selfishness, and breakdowns in solidarity, reflecting real-world challenges of social cohesion in times of crisis. This dynamic adds emotional depth and cultural relevance, highlighting how people respond differently to stress and uncertainty. When it comes to sensitive issues like mortality, grief, and trauma, Final Destination 5 handles them with a surprising degree of nuance for a horror franchise. The film doesn't shy away from showing the psychological impact of facing death repeatedly, exploring characters' denial, guilt, and desperation with a mix of realism and empathy. It acknowledges the emotional toll without tipping into melodrama, making the horror feel more human and relatable. This approach respects the complexity of these experiences and elevates the narrative beyond mere spectacle. The film also quietly comments on the impersonal nature of modern institutions and systems. Death's relentless, bureaucratic-like pursuit can be read as a metaphor for the cold, mechanical forces that shape contemporary life, be it government policies, corporate machinery, or social structures that feel overwhelming and unyielding. The character's sense of powerlessness against this unseen force taps into widespread feelings of alienation and frustration in a complex, often opaque world. This subtle political subtext adds a layer of depth that rewards attentive viewers without ever overshadowing the core thriller elements. What makes the social and cultural commentary in Final Destination 5 particularly effective is how naturally it's integrated into the story. These themes don't feel tacked on or forced. They're woven into the fabric of the characters' experiences and the film's atmosphere. The narrative's relentless pace and tension never slacken because the commentary lives beneath the surface, emerging organically through plot developments, character interactions, and setting choices. It's like an undercurrent that enriches the film's emotional texture and gives the audience something to chew on long after the scares end. Rather than preaching or lecturing, the film invites viewers to consider the fragility of life, the illusion of control, and the complicated dance between fate and free will through the lens of supernatural suspense. This makes Final Destination 5 not just a thrilling ride but a quiet reflection on the anxieties and uncertainties of contemporary life. It reminds us that beneath the everyday routines and modern trappings lies a world full of unpredictability and unseen forces. Forces we may never fully understand but must learn to live with. This subtle commentary, wrapped in a package of inventive death scenes and suspense, gives the film an unexpected depth and resonance that lingers beyond the closing credits. Final Destination 5 doesn't just grab your attention. It seizes it with both hands and refuses to let go, weaving a complicated web of emotional engagement that pulls you deeper with every scene. The film's secret weapon lies in its masterful control over how you feel, timing every moment to provoke a complex cocktail of emotions: anticipation, dread, relief, even twisted amusement, making the audience ride an emotional roller coaster that is as exhausting as it is addictive. From the opening moments, the film hooks you with a terrifyingly plausible scenario: a massive bridge collapse that feels alarmingly real, grounding the supernatural premise in something visceral and immediate. This initial jolt sets the tone and hooks you emotionally because it touches on a very human fear: the fragility of life in a world full of unpredictable disasters. You're not just watching characters. You're emotionally invested in their survival, and that investment raises the stakes for every heartbeat that follows. It's this connection to real human vulnerability that fuels the emotional resonance throughout the movie. What makes the film's engagement particularly potent is its balance of tension and release. Just when you think you've caught your breath, Final Destination 5 ramps the intensity back up with carefully crafted moments of shock and suspense. These jolts are not cheap scares but carefully choreographed sequences designed to hit you unexpectedly. The tension builds methodically, layering small visual cues and narrative breadcrumbs that invite the audience to predict what's coming, transforming passive watching into active participation. You find yourself on edge, eyes scanning the screen for potential hazards, almost playing detective as you anticipate the next lethal domino to fall. This involvement makes every moment feel charged, heightening emotional investment. The film also mixes in moments of dark humor and sharp dialogue that break up the tension with some much-needed levity. These instances aren't just comic relief. They deepen engagement by making the characters feel more human and relatable. When the survivors exchange witty banter or nervously joke in the face of danger, it reminds the audience that these are real people grappling with unimaginable terror, not just horror tropes. This emotional complexity, mixing fear with humor, desperation with camaraderie, creates a nuanced emotional landscape that makes the highs feel higher and the lows hit harder. Perhaps one of the most compelling aspects of Final Destination 5's engagement strategy is how it turns death into an almost interactive puzzle. Each demise is like a mini thriller within the thriller, intricately designed with a chain reaction of events that the audience can try to unravel. This makes the viewing experience highly engaging because you're not just waiting for the next scare. You're mentally piecing together how the seemingly mundane elements around the characters will align to deliver a fatal blow. This intellectual engagement adds a unique dimension to the emotional experience, making viewers eager to rewatch the film and catch details they missed the first time around. The characters' emotional journeys also significantly contribute to the audience's connection. While the premise involves an unstoppable force, the characters themselves are portrayed with enough depth to evoke sympathy. Their reactions, panic, denial, anger, hope, are portrayed authentically, which makes their fates feel more poignant. When a character faces an unexpected, brutal death, it's not just a shock moment but a blow to the emotional core of the story. The audience isn't distanced from the horror. Instead, they are emotionally entwined with the character's struggles, heightening the impact of each scene. This emotional engagement extends beyond the screen, inviting viewers to reflect on the film's broader themes and to discuss them afterward. The clever narrative structure and intricate death sequences spark conversations about fate, free will, and the nature of death, turning casual viewers into active participants in decoding the story. Fans find themselves debating the plausibility of the sequences, the symbolism behind the chain reactions, and how the film fits into the larger Final Destination universe. This kind of audience interaction not only prolongs the film's impact but also fosters a communal experience, as viewers share theories, favorite moments, and emotional reactions with each other. Repeat viewings feel almost inevitable because the film's layered storytelling reveals new insights with each watch. Hidden clues, foreshadowing details, and subtle visual hints reward the attentive viewer, encouraging multiple trips back to the film. This rewatchability keeps the emotional engagement alive long after the credits roll, making Final Destination 5 more than just a one-time thrill. It becomes a puzzle and experience to savor and revisit. Even in quieter, less action-packed scenes, The film maintains emotional resonance by focusing on character development and interpersonal dynamics. These moments allow the audience to breathe and reflect, connecting with the characters on a deeper emotional level. The interplay of fear, hope, and human vulnerability during these pauses intensifies the impact of the more intense sequences. It's this careful pacing and emotional layering that create a dynamic viewing experience, one that keeps viewers invested through a range of feelings rather than relying on constant shock. Ultimately, Final Destination 5 creates an emotional journey that is as much about suspense and horror as it is about connection and reflection. It's a film that invites you not just to watch but to feel, to laugh nervously, gasp in shock, hold your breath in suspense, and maybe even shed a tear for the characters caught in a deadly game beyond their control. This rich emotional texture, combined with the film's clever storytelling and inventive death scenes, ensures that the audience is not just entertained but thoroughly engaged, making the experience thrilling, memorable, and deeply satisfying. Final Destination 5 stands as an intriguing entry in both its franchise and the broader horror genre, showcasing a deft blend of tradition and innovation that invites comparison on multiple fronts. When lined up against its predecessors within the Final Destination series, this installment feels like a thoughtful evolution rather than a mere repetition. The original film burst onto the scene with a fresh, chilling concept: death as an unseen, relentless force orchestrating elaborate fatal accidents, and subsequent sequels wrestled with how to expand that premise without losing the element of surprise. Here, the fifth film confidently tightens the formula, delivering death sequences that are more elaborate and visually stunning, and narrative beats that interweave seamlessly with the series' mythos. Rather than simply rehashing familiar territory, it expands the universe in clever ways, including a narrative twist that connects directly back to the very first film, giving longtime fans a rewarding aha moment. This approach respects the source material while injecting fresh energy and complexity, showing the filmmakers' awareness of franchise fatigue and their effort to avoid it. Compared to other horror films that emerged around the same time, Final Destination 5 carves out a distinctive niche. While many contemporaries focused heavily on jump scares, found footage gimmicks, or supernatural hauntings, this film remains committed to its unique premise: an invisible, inevitable force manipulating the physical world in deadly Rube Goldberg-esque sequences. This commitment allows it to avoid the clichés that often bog down horror movies and instead offers a meticulously crafted suspense experience. The film's special effects and staging are choreographed with a precision more akin to an action thriller or a heist movie, transforming each death scene into a suspenseful sequence where the audience is invited to anticipate the outcome, turning horror into an almost intellectual puzzle. This combination of visceral thrills and cerebral engagement sets it apart from the jump scare reliant landscape of many horror contemporaries. Looking at the director's body of work, Final Destination 5 reflects a maturation in visual storytelling and tonal balance. The film exhibits a more polished style, with cinematography and editing that heighten tension without sacrificing narrative clarity. The pacing is sharper here than in some previous franchise installments, maintaining a rhythm that keeps viewers hooked while providing breathing room for character development and humor. This balance is essential, especially in a genre that can sometimes feel one-note or relentless in its intensity. The director's knack for integrating practical and digital effects to create believable yet spectacular sequences shows a command of craft that elevates the film's production values. Compared to earlier franchise films, which sometimes suffered from uneven tone or pacing issues, this entry feels more assured and cohesive, evidence of a growing confidence in the storytelling and visual language. One of the film's more interesting moves is how it plays with franchise continuity. Unlike many horror sequels that reset or ignore previous storylines, Final Destination 5 deliberately ties itself back to the original movie, creating a circular narrative that rewards fans who have followed the series. This self-referential approach is relatively rare in horror franchises, and adds a layer of complexity and fan service that deepens the lore and invites viewers to think more deeply about the story's mechanics. It's a bold narrative choice that helps the film stand out, offering more than just isolated scares. It builds a larger puzzle that fans can piece together, encouraging repeated viewings and discussions. When you stack it against other popular horror franchises of the time, such as Saw with its grisly traps and moral dilemmas, or The Ring with its supernatural curse, Final Destination 5 differentiates itself through its almost clinical precision in depicting death. It eschews the haunted and the mystical for something more mechanical and inevitable. The deaths aren't just random. They're part of a meticulously constructed chain of cause and effect, which lends the film a unique flavor of horror that blends suspense with a kind of grim fascination. This approach might lack the psychological depth of some of its peers, but it compensates by delivering inventive spectacle and a compelling narrative structure that keeps the audience guessing. Tone-wise, Final Destination 5 strikes a middle ground that many horror films struggle to find. It balances grim, suspenseful moments with touches of dark humor and self-awareness, managing to wink at the audience without undercutting the tension. This balance helps the film appeal to a wider audience. It's scary without being oppressively grim, clever without being overly cerebral, and thrilling without lapsing into camp. This tonal fluidity is one reason it feels more accessible and enjoyable than some of the more niche or extreme horror films of its era. In terms of innovation, the film is less about reinventing the wheel and more about perfecting it. The concept of death's elaborate design was groundbreaking in the first film, but by the fifth, it risks becoming formulaic. Instead of abandoning the formula, Final Destination 5 embraces and refines it, introducing more intricate and surprising death sequences, more dynamic cinematography, and a more interconnected narrative. This refinement elevates the experience, making it feel fresh and engaging even to those who might be wary of sequels. The film also benefits from a tighter script and more nuanced performances than some of its franchise predecessors, helping it transcend the reputation for disposable horror sequels. The characters feel more fleshed out, their interactions more natural, which increases emotional investment and makes the horror more effective. This focus on character and storytelling helps Final Destination 5 avoid the pitfalls of relying solely on spectacle and scares. Overall, in the crowded landscape of horror sequels and genre films, Final Destination 5 holds its own by being a smart, stylish, and self-aware installment that honors its roots while pushing boundaries just enough to remain exciting. It may not reinvent horror cinema, but it refines and polishes a beloved formula into something that feels both familiar and surprisingly fresh, a balancing act that few horror sequels manage with such skill. Final Destination 5 offers a surprisingly rich playground for symbolism and metaphor that operates beneath the surface of its adrenaline-fueled plot. At its core, the film is not just a series of gruesome accidents but a meditation on fate, control, and the fragile interconnectedness of life. A theme brought to life through a variety of visual motifs and symbolic elements that invite the audience to think deeper, even as their pulse races. The concept of death as a design or pattern is itself a grand metaphor. Rather than portraying death as a random, chaotic event, the film frames it as a meticulously orchestrated sequence of events, like a cruel, invisible artist crafting an elaborate masterpiece. Each accident is part of this larger tapestry, a carefully engineered domino effect that the characters try desperately to disrupt but ultimately cannot. This notion touches on philosophical questions about determinism versus free will, suggesting that life's seemingly random moments are in fact part of an inevitable, predestined plan. The film's very structure, chain reactions leading to death, mirrors this metaphor, making the audience complicit as they watch the fatal sequence unfold with a mix of horror and fascination. Bridges and suspended structures appear repeatedly throughout the movie, and they're not just arbitrary locations for death scenes. Bridges symbolize transition, thresholds, and precarious balance, both literally and metaphorically. The opening bridge collapse doesn't just physically separate survivors from victims. It symbolizes the thin line between life and death, and the fragile connections that hold us suspended in between. Bridges also evoke vulnerability, as they are exposed structures hanging over voids, mirroring the characters' own precarious situations. This liminality, the in-between state, resonates throughout the film, reminding us that the characters live in a suspended moment between escaping death and succumbing to it. Clocks, calendars, and countdowns emerge as recurring visual symbols that hammer home the theme of mortality's ticking clock. These timepieces are reminders that the character's survival is temporary, that their reprieve from death's design is fleeting. The persistent presence of these symbols creates a mounting sense of urgency and anxiety, but they also operate metaphorically as a representation of life's finite nature. We all live under the shadow of an invisible deadline, and the film externalizes this universal truth through the literal ticking down of time, transforming suspense into an existential meditation. Mirrors and reflections weave through the film as another rich layer of symbolism. Characters often see themselves reflected at moments of realization or dread, which functions as a visual metaphor for self-awareness and confrontation with mortality. Mirrors represent the duality of identity, the self we present versus the inevitable self that faces death. They can also symbolize the inescapability of fate. No matter how much the characters run, they must face themselves and the looming reality mirrored back at them. This creates a haunting psychological tension that deepens the horror beyond physical danger. The color palette subtly supports these themes as well. The sterile, cool blues and grays of hospital corridors, office buildings, and other impersonal spaces evoke feelings of detachment, inevitability, and death's clinical precision. These tones contrast with warmer, softer hues during moments of emotional connection or fleeting hope, creating a visual metaphor for the tension between life's warmth and death's cold finality. The shifts in color temperature cue the audience to the changing emotional stakes without needing overt exposition. Everyday objects take on ominous symbolic weight throughout the film. Items as mundane as a zip tie, a spilled cup of coffee, or a loose cable are elevated to harbingers of doom, symbolizing how death can lurk in the smallest details. This subversion of the ordinary into the extraordinary taps into a fundamental anxiety that danger and mortality are embedded in daily life, often hidden beneath surfaces we take for granted. These objects become the threads in the web of death's design, reinforcing the film's central metaphor of interconnectedness and inevitability. Silence and sound function symbolically too. Moments when the score cuts out or sound drops away create an eerie emptiness that mirrors the isolation and helplessness of the characters. Silence becomes a metaphor for the void of death, an absence not just of life, but of control, presence, and hope. Conversely, sharp bursts of sound or music signal moments when the characters confront their fate head-on, punctuating the emotional and narrative beats with sensory intensity. This interplay heightens tension and reflects the emotional roller coaster of struggling against an unstoppable force. Hands frequently appear as symbolic imagery, reaching, grasping, slipping away. They represent human agency, connection, and survival instinct. Yet, in many critical moments, hands fail to clutch safety or rescue others, symbolizing the futility of resistance against death's design. This motif poignantly captures the tension between human will and inevitable fate, underscoring vulnerability and loss. It's a visual shorthand for the characters' desperation and the thin grip they hold on life. Even the film's narrative structure plays with metaphor. The circular storytelling, linking back to the very first Final Destination film, suggests a closed loop, a cycle of life, death, and rebirth. This cyclical nature implies that fate's design is not linear but recurring, that attempts to escape it may only delay the inevitable. This metalayer enriches the theme of inescapability and reinforces the film's meditation on mortality as a continuous, unending process rather than a singular event. Taken together, these symbols and metaphors transform Final Destination 5 from a straightforward horror flick into a layered exploration of death, fate, and human fragility. They invite the audience to look beyond the surface gore and thrills to the deeper, sometimes unsettling truths about life's unpredictability and the invisible forces that govern it. Watching the film becomes a kind of puzzle-solving experience. Not just guessing how characters will die, but interpreting what those deaths represent in the larger tapestry of existence. This rich symbolic undercurrent adds intellectual heft and emotional resonance, making the film a more compelling and thought-provoking ride than you might expect from a horror sequel. Final Destination 5 doesn't just exist as the fifth entry in a horror franchise. It acts like a clever keystone piece that reshapes the whole series' landscape, giving longtime fans something to chew on beyond the usual thrills and chills. The franchise started back in 2000 with the original Final Destination, introducing a fresh and chilling concept. Death isn't random or accidental, it's a meticulously planned design that can't be cheated. This idea struck a chord and gave rise to sequels that each tried to build on that deadly blueprint. By the time the fifth movie rolls around, the series has become both a playground for increasingly inventive death scenes and a mythological universe with its own rules about fate, survival, and inevitability. What makes Final Destination 5 particularly fascinating in franchise terms is how it manages to tie itself back to the very beginning of the series in a way that feels clever rather than forced. The closing scenes essentially create a loop, linking back to the first movie's infamous airplane disaster, which retroactively reframes the events across the entire saga. This cyclical narrative twist isn't just a neat Easter egg for fans. It adds a layer of coherence and complexity to what could have easily been a series of disconnected scare episodes. It invites viewers to rethink the whole franchise as a continuous story rather than standalone installments, transforming each death and survival moment into part of a larger, inescapable cosmic design. In many ways, Final Destination 5 benefits from being aware of what came before and what audiences expect, while still daring to shake things up. It embraces the franchise's signature elements, those elaborate Rube Goldberg-style death sequences that are part horror, part dark art, but elevates them with slicker effects and more sophisticated choreography. This balance between continuity and innovation is a hallmark of successful franchise filmmaking, and here it feels like the film learned from the missteps of earlier sequels, many of which struggled with pacing, character development, or originality. The fifth film offers a tighter story, a clearer sense of stakes, and characters that, while still operating in the horror archetype space, are more relatable and fleshed out. Technologically, this installment is also a fascinating snapshot of the franchise evolving alongside the advances in filmmaking. The original movie leaned heavily on practical effects, creating visceral, tactile scares. By the fifth film, digital effects have become seamlessly integrated, enabling the creators to imagine and execute more complex sequences, like the massive bridge collapse and the subsequent chain reactions, that would have been impossible or prohibitively expensive before. But it's not just about adding CGI for spectacle's sake. The film cleverly blends digital effects with practical stunts to maintain a sense of realism, keeping the audience grounded even as the scenarios become increasingly surreal. This marriage of old-school craftsmanship and modern technology demonstrates the franchise's ability to adapt to changing filmmaking landscapes without losing its identity. The film's contribution to the overall mythology of the Final Destination universe also reflects a deeper cultural fascination with fate, mortality, and the illusion of control. Each film in the series explores the tension between human agency and destiny, how people try to outwit death's design but are ultimately powerless against it. This ongoing thematic exploration elevates the franchise from a mere sequence of jump scares to a meditation on existential anxiety that resonates universally. Final Destination 5 sharpens this focus by revisiting familiar territory but with more clarity and ambition, making viewers reflect on the cyclical, relentless nature of fate. It's also worth noting how Final Destination 5 fits within the franchise's timeline in terms of tone and style. While the earlier films varied between campy and serious, the fifth installment strikes a somewhat darker, more serious tone that leans into suspense and atmosphere without sacrificing the twisted humor and over-the-top kills fans expect. This tonal shift feels like a natural progression, reflecting the franchise's maturation and the audience's growing appetite for horror that is both smart and scary. Overall, Final Destination 5 serves as a kind of keystone that bridges the past and future of the franchise. It honors the original's groundbreaking premise while injecting new life and complexity into the series, both narratively and visually. For fans, it rewards loyalty with callbacks and connections, while for newcomers, it offers a thrilling, self-contained experience with enough context to appreciate the larger stakes. By doing so, it reinforces the franchise's core message. No matter how far you run or what you do, death's design is always watching, waiting, and ultimately claiming its due. Final Destination 5 strikes a fascinating balance in the realm of film budgets and box office returns, proving once again that you don't need an astronomical budget to make a memorable impact in the horror world. Clocking in with a budget estimated around $40 million, it sat comfortably in the mid-tier range. Not shoestring but not a massive blockbuster either. This budget was enough to give the production team ample room to craft those jaw-dropping death sequences the franchise is famous for, especially the iconic and complex bridge collapse scene that sets the tone for the entire movie. What's impressive is how the film uses its resources smartly. The mix of practical effects and CGI feels convincing and visceral without ever coming off as overindulgent or cheap. The production values appear polished and cinematic, which isn't always the case with horror sequels, especially by the fifth entry. This suggests a carefully managed budget where every dollar is aimed at enhancing the thrills, rather than wasted on unnecessary extravagance. Looking at the box office, Final Destination 5 performed solidly, pulling in about $157 million worldwide. For a film with a moderate budget, that's a healthy return and underscores the enduring popularity of the franchise. It's particularly notable because fifth installments often suffer from franchise fatigue, where audiences grow tired of repetitive formulas and characters. But here, the film managed to keep enough fresh energy and suspense to sustain strong interest, proving that the Final Destination brand still packs a punch. This financial success helped secure the franchise's place in the horror pantheon and justified further sequels and spin-offs down the line. The marketing machine behind Final Destination 5 deserves credit for playing a major role in this financial outcome. The campaign was savvy, highlighting the film's hallmark: inventive, brutal, and intricately staged death scenes. Trailers and posters leaned heavily into the spectacle, teasing audiences with glimpses of the elaborate chain reactions and suspenseful moments without giving too much away. This approach generated buzz and anticipation, especially among younger viewers and horror aficionados who relished dissecting and discussing elaborate kill sequences. The timing of the release, just before the holiday season, was a smart move too, capturing moviegoers looking for thrilling entertainment during a typically crowded cinematic period. Audience reception had a noticeable impact on box office momentum. While critics were somewhat mixed, often critiquing the film's character depth or genre clichés, fans of the franchise and the horror community generally responded positively. The film's return to the roots of the original Final Destination, with its clever narrative twists and inventive death scenes, resonated strongly with viewers, sparking word-of-mouth recommendations. This grassroots buzz was amplified by social media, where fans shared clips, theories, and reactions, further fueling interest and repeat viewings. It's a testament to how important a dedicated fan base is in sustaining a horror franchise beyond just its initial theatrical release. From a production perspective, the budget also reflects an interesting balance between practical and digital effects. The filmmakers wisely invested in tangible real-world stunts and sets, which give the sequences a grounded, gritty feel, while using CGI to amplify scenes that would have been impossible or unsafe to film practically. This hybrid approach ensures the film looks visually impressive and believable, without crossing into the territory of over-reliance on computer effects that can sometimes alienate viewers. It's a careful dance that shows thoughtful budgeting decisions, where the goal is maximum impact with efficient spending. In addition, the film's financial story can't be separated from its distribution strategy and ancillary markets. Beyond theatrical release, Final Destination 5 performed well on home video and streaming platforms, expanding its revenue stream and extending its cultural footprint. This afterlife of earnings is crucial for horror franchises, which often build long-term profitability through DVD sales, rentals, and digital purchases. The film's success in these markets further validates the investment made and the audience's appetite for the franchise's particular brand of suspense and spectacle. Overall, the budget and box office journey of Final Destination 5 tells a story of smart financial stewardship combined with creative ambition. It's a film that knows what it's good at: elaborate death sequences and tense suspense, and allocates resources accordingly, delivering a satisfying experience that resonates with its core audience. The strong box office performance proves that even in a crowded horror landscape, a well-crafted sequel with a strategic budget and a focused marketing campaign can still carve out impressive commercial success. In this way, Final Destination 5 stands as an example of how mid-budget horror movies can punch above their weight, using a mix of creativity, franchise loyalty, and savvy promotion to leave a lasting impression both in theaters and beyond. When it comes to tracking down Final Destination 5 for your next movie night, The good news is that it's pretty accessible across multiple platforms, giving you plenty of options depending on how you like to experience your horror fix. Since it's not a brand new blockbuster lighting up theater marquees anymore, you probably won't find it in cinemas unless there's some special event or horror film retrospective happening nearby. But don't let that stop you. This movie has made the smooth transition into the digital age and is readily available to stream, rent, or buy on a variety of platforms that cater to today's on-demand viewing habits. Streaming services are often the quickest and easiest way to jump into Final Destination 5. Depending on where you live and which streaming providers have current licensing deals, you might find the movie included as part of a subscription package, or available for individual rental or purchase. Platforms like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video, or HBO Max sometimes rotate in movies like this, making it a breeze to watch without any extra cost beyond your subscription fee. The beauty of streaming is the instant access. No waiting for discs to arrive, no leaving the house, just a few clicks and you're immersed in that tension-filled world. The ability to pause, rewind, and rewatch is a huge plus, especially for a movie packed with intricate setups and shocking payoffs like this one. Want to catch that subtle hint of danger right before the bridge starts to give way? Dream it. Want to replay the ingenious chain reaction of deaths that the franchise is known for? Stream it again. For those who demand the highest visual and audio quality, renting or buying the movie digitally in HD or 4K from platforms like iTunes, Google Play Movies, Vudu, or Amazon Video might be your best bet. This option allows you to experience Final Destination 5 in crisp resolution with vibrant colors and detailed imagery, which really enhances the immersive experience. The sound design, so crucial in building suspense and delivering those gut-wrenching death scenes, comes alive with the right setup, making every creak, snap, and ominous silence resonate with eerie clarity. Whether you watch on a smart TV, a home theater system, or a quality laptop, these high-definition versions help the film's visuals and audio hit their peak impact. If you're a collector or someone who loves the tactile side of movie watching, Final Destination 5 is also widely available on DVD and Blu-ray. Beyond just the main feature, physical copies often come loaded with bonus material. Directors' commentaries, behind-the-scenes footage, interviews with cast and crew, deleted scenes, and sometimes even featurettes showing the making of those elaborate death sequences. These extras can add a whole new layer of appreciation, giving fans a peek into the creativity and craftsmanship that went into the film's memorable moments. Plus, having a physical copy means you're not dependent on internet speed or whether the movie is currently offered on your favorite streaming service. It's there on your shelf, ready to go at a moment's notice. Now, to get the fullest and most thrilling experience of Final Destination 5, setting the right atmosphere can make all the difference. This is a movie that thrives on tension, dread, and surprise, so watching it in a dimly lit room with minimal distractions will really ramp up the suspense. Crank up the volume to catch every subtle sound cue, the distant creak of stressed metal, the faint hum of electricity, the sudden, heart-stopping silence before disaster strikes. These audio details are crafted to pull you into the moment, making the scares hit harder and the tension more palpable. Watching with friends who share your love for horror can turn it into a communal experience where gasps, screams, and nervous laughter make the film even more fun. Alternatively, watching alone can create a personal, immersive atmosphere where you can focus on every detail and plot twist, making the experience deeply engaging and maybe even a bit unsettling. For those with a home theater setup, playing the film on a large screen with a surround sound system can transform those signature death sequences into cinematic spectacles. The sound design and visuals come together to make you feel like you're right there on the bridge or in the chaotic aftermath of a disaster, caught in the suspense alongside the characters. If you're limited to smaller screens like a tablet or phone, using headphones can help recapture some of that immersive sound experience, pulling you closer to the film's intense atmosphere despite the smaller visuals. In short, Final Destination 5 is widely accessible and adaptable to how you like to watch movies. Whether you're streaming in your living room, renting the HD version for a crisp cinematic feel, popping in a Blu-ray for the extras, or gathering friends for a horror marathon, the film delivers its thrills most effectively when you commit to the mood and immerse yourself fully. It rewards close attention and quick reflexes, making every viewing an edge-of-your-seat adventure. No matter which format or setting you choose, Final Destination 5 is ready to deliver the kind of suspenseful, inventive horror experience that keeps fans coming back for more.